It's the start of an entirely new season of the EverQuest Show. And it's expansion season. We're shedding some light on Night of Shadows for EverQuest and Renewal of Ro for EverQuest II. Which EQ2 expansions are the best? We're counting down the top expansions, and we'll also meet our new EverQuest II contributor. A new season of the EverQuest Show starts right now.
Not even close to the end, it's just beginning. Life is getting lighter while the days are getting brighter, yeah. Celebrate life and get excited about good times and good living. Come on, shout it out, hey! Take it up, take it over, take it out of control. Today I'm freeing my soul and now you got me singing, oh, hey, oh.
Finally, an all-new season of the EverQuest Show, and I'm coming to you from our official EverQuest Show studios. I'm hoping that Season 2 of the EverQuest Show brings even more EverQuest stories, interviews, and behind-the-scenes details. And we're diving deep into the history and content of the original game, as well as bringing you more quality EverQuest 2 content. And the EverQuest universe is vast. We're reaching into the numerous other games in the EverQuest universe on PC, PlayStation, and yes, even mobile, as well as uncovering what's ahead for the future of the franchise. And there is a whole season of previous EverQuest Show episodes, so if you missed any, be sure to check them all out on this channel or on EverQuestShow.com. It's expansion season for EverQuest and EverQuest II, and I can't think of a better kickoff to the EverQuest Show than breaking down Night of Shadows and Renewal of Ro. Night of Shadows is EverQuest's 29th expansion and the second in the nostalgic revisit of Luclin. The previous expansion, Terror of Luclin, also checked in with Norath's Veiled Moon, but this time, as the name would suggest, we're headed to the dark side. Now let's start with the key art for this expansion. The artist, Karen Bayet, is no stranger to EverQuest, and he's done a lot of the previous expansion art pieces going back to Reign of Fear. The art features a large owlbear spirit. It's broken free from behind the locked areas behind Shadowhaven, and now it's wreaked havoc across parts of Luclin. Whereas Terror of Luclin focused on some of the original higher level zones of Luclin, this expansion will certainly hit more nostalgia of the early zones of Luclin. There are 7 total zones for Night of Shadows. 4 of those are redesigns or repopulations of some of the earlier zones in Luclin. Sharval Divided is essentially Sharval, but it's been repopulated for higher levels, and I admit it did return me to that nostalgic experience of the newbie area surrounding the outskirts of Sharval. From there, Shadeweaver's Tangle, it's the update of Shadeweaver's Thicket, but there are new quests and there's a follow-up to the Lodokai Bandits. The earthquake, or I guess we should call it a moonquake, that was caused by the owlbear spirit that's ravaged parts of the area has opened the way to Firefall Pass. Firefall Pass is one of the newly created zones in Night of Shadows. One of the mountains in Firefall Pass is literally split in two, and the previous inhabitants, as well as the newcomers investigating the area, they are fighting over territory. Also from Shadeweaver's Tangle, you can enter Pollutal Depths. Now, who hasn't XP'd early on in Pollutal Caverns? Well, Pollutal Depths is the updated and reworked version. The zone maintains the same layout, so it will be familiar, but it's obviously been recreated, and the updates to most of the models, that's a nice touch as well. How many of us camped those recondite camps back in the day? Well, they're back too, although there's no sign of Yellow Eyes. Just a zone away, Shadowhaven is now in a state of disarray after that aforementioned owlbear spirit creature rampaged through the city. Alright, and now to some areas you may not be familiar with. In addition to Firefall Pass, there are 2 additional newly developed zones. Now, beyond Shadowhaven lies Deepshade. This is the former home of the imprisoned owlbear spirit named Grakaw, and it's astonishingly beautiful, and it's pretty well designed as well. It's also pretty large, and there are plenty of fungus people and lots of other creatures. It does take a while to explore around and see the various levels of the zone, but you're going to want to do that. It is an exceptional zone and very well designed. And beyond Deepshade is Darklight Caverns. It's home to lots of different mystical animal spirits hiding in the depths since the Karens first arrived on Luclin. Overall, the expansion feels pretty good. I was worried that it was going to be incessantly dark, like watching that Long Night episode of Game of Thrones, but Firefall Pass and Shadeweaver's Tangle do alleviate a lot of the claustrophobia of being underground much of the time, and even zones like Deepshade are so vast in their caverns that it does give an open feel. The storyline is certainly intertwined between all the zones, but finding out the true course of what happened is all a part of adventuring into Night of Shadows. The biggest feature to the expansion will likely be the Trade Skill Depot. Limited bank space and thousands of stacks of trade skill items, that's long been a problem for players, but the Trade Skill Depot is going to alleviate a lot of that. It's going to allow these items to be stored and used across all characters on the same account and the same server. The UI is similar to the Dragon's Hoard feature, and it's accessed at a bank, but you can use the depot anywhere in the world that you trade skill. It's going to hold nearly 100,000 of each item, regardless of how they stack in bags, and additional slots can be added to the base amount of 250 or more depending on which edition you purchase. Night of Shadows appears to be a nice mix of nostalgia and new exploration. The lore is pretty interesting, and the content is not as lean as you would expect for a 23-year-old game's 29th expansion. And while EQ1 is heading into the shadows of the moon, EverQuest II is heading directly into the sunlight on the Isle of Ro. Shortly after celebrating its 18th anniversary, EverQuest II has released Renewal of Ro, the 19th expansion. The southern half of the Isle of Ro has long been an unexplored area of Norath's map. But that changes as we return to the deserts of Ro that many enjoyed from EverQuest's first expansion, Desert of Flames. But that doesn't mean it's all sand and sun. In the Rajdur Plateaus, you'll get that desert feel, but head into the Takish Badlands and it's a nice change to a verdant green landscape with a Jack and the Beanstalk feel. Beneath the sands of Ro lies Takish Hiz, former home of the Eldar Elven Empire of Tunaria from ages ago. But the last time we visited the buried city was in EverQuest I's Prophecy of Ro expansion. Rounding out Renewal of Ro is the Sandstone Delta. It's an unforgiving, dry landscape that shows us what has happened to the southern desert of Ro and the Liefire River. The story of Renewal of Ro starts out with helping the Arakan return to their original thread of reality. But of course, that's only the beginning, and some familiar friends and foes show up along the way. This expansion features the usual quest series, signature quests, heroic dungeons, collections, and more. And the EverQuest Show received these exclusive pieces of concept artwork of a cursed scholar. Potentially, this could be one of the raid bosses in Renewal of Ro, as well as a peek at some armor concept art. If you want to get a look at these up close, you can find them at EverQuestShow.com. Overall, I've been enjoying poking around in Renewal of Ro, even if I have had my unskilled butt handed to me by corpse beaks. And I know I shouldn't admit it, but I'm really not the most skilled EverQuest II player. But I didn't want my lack of experience in the game to hurt the EverQuest II content on this show, so I enlisted some help. Enter Bear from the Bear Necessities YouTube channel. Bear, I'm really glad you're here to finally help out with some EverQuest II content, but tell people a little bit about yourself.
I started raiding and playing in Planes of Power, and then when EverQuest II came out in 2004, I moved over pretty much immediately. I played a lot of EverQuest II, and I've been playing ever since, pretty much.
And Bear, for people that may not be familiar with your YouTube channel, tell them a little bit about what type of great content that you produce for EverQuest II.
There really wasn't a whole lot of EverQuest II content that wasn't just like a Let's Play or something like that. So it was kind of hard for people who were brand new to really get into the game and understand like what are the classes, what does each expansion have to offer, what are some of the mechanics specifically on the TLE servers. So if you're a new person who really wants to learn what do I want to play and what do I want to raid as? Do I want to be a grouper? Do I want to be a soloer? Do I want to be a raider? Do I want to be a crafter? Do I want to do housing? Trying to show people all that EverQuest II has to offer from like a high level of someone who's brand new and just wants to join in and play.
And Bear, Renewal of Ro, the next expansion for EverQuest II, what are your thoughts?
Whenever you get in, you'll be able to do, the new signature line, new quests, new overland zones, new heroics and things like that. But raid content doesn't actually come out until like mid-January. So it's kind of a good opportunity for you to get in, really experience all the zones, experience all the content, prepare for those raids and get ready to hit those raids right when they start coming out in January.
And you can already find plenty of Bear's content and links to his incredibly helpful EQ2 guides, walkthroughs, and other videos on the Bear Necessities channel, as well as on EverQuestShow.com. If you're a frequent watcher of the EverQuest Show, you know that I love a countdown, and I thought in the vein of expansion season and trying to give EverQuest II a little bit more love, what better way to do that than to count down the top expansions in EverQuest II? So with the help of some EQ2 players, Bear and I came up with our picks for what we think are the top 5 expansions. So will your list match our list? Well, let's find out. Number 5, Sentinel's Fate. The 6th expansion for EverQuest II was released in February of 2010 and checked in with the continent of Otis in the EQ2 storyline. Levels went up to 90, and we got to revisit some iconic locations like Payneal, Eridan, The Hole, Stonefront, and Tox Forest.
Had really good raid content. It was really challenging. It was one of the first times in the expansions that they added in easy mode versus hard mode. And it also was kind of a culmination of a lot of lore, because there was the Kinos Claymore, there was the Swords of Destiny, which were 2 timelines in previous expansions that kind of started merging together into this really cohesive lore in Sentinel's Fate.
Number 4, the Shadow Odyssey.
There are a lot of interesting features that just came to this Shadow Odyssey. You had quest hubs, or you had dungeon hubs where there would be like one area you could get like multiple quests and you could do like 2 or 3 dungeons in that area. It also brought about currency, which is still prevalent to this day. It also brought about a really interesting idea in raid progression called Flawless. If you cleared a raid encounter and no one died in your raid, you got an achievement, a Flawless achievement.
Instanced nostalgic-themed dungeons made the Shadow Odyssey the Eldon of EQ2, and just like Lost Dungeons of Norath making the top 5 in our EverQuest expansion countdown, the Shadow Odyssey lands in the number 4 spot. Number 3, Kingdom of Sky. It was only the 2nd expansion for EverQuest II, but it literally took us to new heights.
Kingdom of Sky brings you back to the plane of sky. Once you zone into any of the Kingdom of Sky zones, you're literally on floating islands. And they're put together with chains, or they're just floating out into nothingness. It also brought about really, really engaging raid content. And it also brought about a ton of dragons, which was really interesting. You really only had like 1 or 2 dragons in Shattered Lands, and now it's like dragon overload. Dragons in every zone.
Number 2, Rise of Kunark. Kunark will always be a special place for most EverQuest players, so it's no surprise that EQ2's 4th expansion revisiting that continent was highly anticipated and well received.
Rise of Kunark was great because there's a huge nostalgia overload. Every single Kunark zone that you can think of is there. Over there, you have Skyfire, you have Lake of Omen. They brought back epics. So these really epic quests that are very long. There were parts of it that were heroic. Then you had to dive into Vishan's Peak to get some kills of different dragons. And honestly, the raid content was really good. The group content was really good. And there's just so many things to do.
Before we get to the number 1 expansion on our countdown, here are a few honorable mentions. Honorable mention, Desert of Flames.
Desert of Flames was the first expansion, so it's hard to not mention it at all. It added in climbing, and it also just had like so many different cool quest lines, and the environment is just beautiful.
Honorable mention, Destiny of Velius.
All of the lore and nostalgia around Tower of Frozen Shadow, and the Frost Giants, and the Coldane.
That's when we introduced flying.
Oh, God.
And had to go back to every single zone we made.
Adding and flying brought a whole new aspect to EverQuest II in general.
Number 1, Echoes of Fadewar. From the initial launch of EverQuest II, players longed to see what had become of the continent of Fadewar, and though we had to wait until EQ2's 3rd expansion, we were not disappointed. Seeing what happened to our iconic EQ1 landmarks and leveling dungeons like Unrest, Castle Mistmore, and Crushbone made the game feel rich and familiar. And the entire expansion was beautiful, visually and musically.
The soundtrack is amazing. You hear like these woodwinds and these really complex soundtracks to each zone. to see these cities reimagined, like New Toon Area, like Kelethin, for example. Looks amazing.
I can't tell you the emotions I had personally the first time I saw Kelethin in EverQuest II.
It's up in the treetops, just like in EQ1, but it's totally reimagined.
We all know that iconic Kelethin music. Hearing it remastered is really something to take in.
You have to mention as well, they brought in 2 new races, the Fae and the Erisai, and this is the first new races that they had added to the game since launch, and it added in a completely new leveling path. So you could start in Kelethin, and you could start at level 1, and you could stay in Echoes of Fadewar all the way to 70.
Expansive content, iconic zones, and immersive music and quests came together in Echoes of Fadewar to make it our pick for the top expansion in EverQuest II. So did your top 5 match our top 5, or was there something you disagreed with? Well, if you did, make sure you comment below and let us know about it, or if you thought something should have been on the list that didn't make it. And while you're there, make sure you click subscribe or share this video. It always helps to support the channel. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate our EQ2 players and contributors, especially Bear from the Bear Necessities YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll have more content coming soon.
The best we can be, and though sometimes we don't want to, still we gotta chase our dreams, reach up and reach high, because we're gonna pull through and give it all we got, even though it can seem hard to catch and make it happen, but we can't start sliding. Come on and do what you gotta do to fight on. And so no matter what comes your way, nothing can ruin your day or even wipe a smile away. And by the time I'm up and out of my bed, I got 100 new ideas floating around in my head, with the hope for tomorrow, a dream that I can see of all the awesome things, the great people we could be. Or maybe by the music or the songs that I sing, I'll change the world with the simple message that it will bring.